Welcome to the Colts Squad Show. I'm your host, Derek Schultz, and this spooky season, I'm glad the Colts are playing less scared out there.
And I'm Zach Hicks, and I agree. They're playing less scared, and I'm just excited to see if they can get back on track this week against the Raiders.
I'm Jake Arthur, and I too may retire before the show is over.
Hi, I'm Alan Pinkett, former player, and Colts fans, be optimistic. I'll tell you why later.
Colts Nation, rise up. It's the Colts Squad. Everything Indianapolis Colts every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the Circle City, the way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. It's time to squad up. The Colts Squad Show starts now.
Welcome to the Colts Squad Show here on the Colts, Locked On Colts Network, I should say. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I'm Derek Schultz, Indy sports talker and columnist for the Indianapolis Business Journal. I am joined by the much more accomplished and handsome legendary Notre Dame running back, Alan Pinkett, also a 6-year NFLer with the Houston Oilers. And, of course, you everydayers know they're handsome, too. The Locked On Colts duo of Zach Hicks and Jake Arthur, your first listen every day. We talked about some key mistakes dooming the Colts in LA with our recap show on Sunday, but they'll have a great opportunity to bounce back against a Raiders team that many believe is a bottom third level team in the NFL coming up this Sunday. We'll talk all about that. And also on tonight's show, we're going to discuss the surprise Xavien Howard retirement news. How about that? Kind of coming out of nowhere. I'm sitting down around dinner time and I'm going through, and of course, I follow Jake Arthur because how could you not? Breaking Colts news. Jake is the person to go to, and I see.
I was at the grocery store, luckily enough.
Yeah, Jake is always on call.
I texted Zach immediately. Was like, "Can you do a quick video on that?"
Jake, I was watching the Goonies with my wife. It was a horrible time to step away, but don't worry, I did it just for you, buddy. Don't worry.
You know it's serious when we're dropping the Goonies to tend to the breaking news. So We'll talk all about that and then what the Colts do at cornerback moving forward here. Reasons for optimism after the season's first defeat. I think we're all on the same page here. Alan, I know you alluded to it as well. Even though the Colts lost that game, even though they did so making some critical mistakes, I think all of us are pretty aligned that at the what used to be the traditional quarter pull of the season, we're feeling pretty good about where the Colts are sitting right now at 3-1. Overreactions, underreactions from week 4. We do that every single week on our Wednesday show. So things that we think we're overreacting to, things that we think are not being talked about enough, essentially. We'll do that in the third segment. And then we'll take our first look at the Raiders, and we'll mix in some other talk about A.D. Mitchell. I want to get into the linebacker group as well with Cam McGrone and some of the other news since we last spoke. But, guys, let's start with Howard. I think these two are in two completely different categories. But even though some fans wanted them gone, both gone, A.D. Mitchell, I think you treated a lot differently than Xavien Howard, right? So this doesn't appear to be the Colts' decision, Jake, but you just kind of have to wonder timing-wise if they were going to make the decision to move on anyway, or at the very least pull him back from the previous role that he had in these first couple of games.
Yeah, I am a bit curious with this timing if they were going to scale him back a little bit, and if he wasn't like, I have other stuff I'd much rather be doing anyways. Let me bounce on out of here. We won't know for sure quite yet for a little while, but no, we weren't getting the same level of verbal commitment from Shane Steichen and Lou Anarumo as we had been previously, because this wasn't the first week we had to ask about Xavien Howard, and they use the verbiage that at least Shane uses when a change is somewhat imminent. You know what I mean? So I don't think they could really hide it anymore. I don't think they could deny anymore that it was becoming a pretty big problem, that, you like the guy, what he can provide as a guy that takes the ball away and everything. But at the same time, do you want to have it in the back of your mind every week that, all right, they know how to attack him out there. He's going to be out there 50, 60 snaps. We're going to be vulnerable for this amount of time. I think it would probably have been wise for them to scale back a little bit. We'd obviously been talking about Jonathan Edwards, Mekhi Blackman, whoever you want to get out there. Yeah, it's we'll see. I mean, I applaud him for acknowledging that, he just had things that were more important to them at this time. But also, I mean, Alan will talk about this too. Guys don't want to go out looking like a shell of themselves. And a 4-game sample size of him looking like this is a lot different than a 17 game sample size where games could be cost because of his errors and things like that. You know what I mean? So I applaud him for acknowledging what probably needed to be done. And you know, if physically you're not there anymore, you at least have to be 110% there mentally. And it sounds like he probably wasn't. So yeah, it sounds like this probably was for the best for everyone.
Yeah, and I would say there were two plays in particular in this last game that I'm not saying that like, oh, he needs to retire off of these moments, but I think there were two moments where a guy who used to be a star corner in this league, a Pro Bowl caliber corner, I think he was all pro one season as well, and had even defensive player of the year votes because of his interception total. But I think that there was really just there was two moments from this past game. It was on the final drive when the Rams were going down to score before the game winning drive, obviously on the next drive when they got the ball, that really just kind of showed me that like, he might not have this anymore. And one was he was inside leverage on Devontae Adams on it was like an open field concept here. And Adams broke outside. He had help over the top, but you have to drive on that outside. And he just could not cover that ground whatsoever on Devontae Adams, who's not a young receiver here. You know, Adams is a very good player, but we're not talking about like a 4'2", like 22-year-old here. This is a guy around the same age as him, and he really couldn't close that ground. And then on the game-tying touchdown to Puka Nacua, look, if you're a guy who knows your limitations, you inside leverage that, you force him into the fade route because you know you're not getting help to the inside. But I think because he used to be this star player, he's playing face up on him. He's playing physical with him there, and he just gets beat so cleanly on that play. And I wonder if he was just thinking back to those moments after the game being like, I'm not playing up to the standard that I've set for myself my entire career. And I just can't really get there right now based on, you know, everything that's going on. He was out of the game last year. You know, it's a hard way to ramp up and get back to your star level when you were younger. So I think those two moments really probably played into it for him, if I had to speculate, where it's just like, you know, I've heard, what was it? There was on like an NBA 2K game a couple years ago, there was one of the commentators on there was talking about the moment that he knew that he was going to retire was that when a dude, like a younger player, just blew right around him on a layup or whatever. And he's like, I can't turn with this guy anymore. And it's like, that's when I know I got to retire. I wonder if those were kind of moments that factored into this for Howard, where it's like, my body's not doing what I'm telling it to do on the field like it did when I was younger. And it's better to just, you know, get out now while I can, while I still have some pride. And honestly, again, you don't want to take a benching at 32 years old. What are you going to do? Play special teams at 32 when you didn't even play last year? You know, like that's a young man's game, playing special teams in the NFL when you have his kind of pedigree. So, yeah, I think a lot of this factored in, and it hurts going against Puka Nacua because he would drop 170 on anybody. But I think this just kind of escalated the thoughts he was probably already having coming into this week.
Well, I'll say this: 99% of guys get cut before they're physically done playing football. You know, the football team, the team makes the decision for you a lot of times. And Zach, we were talking, there may have been some fiscal reasons also, because I had never heard of a reserve retired list. I don't even know what the hell that is. But he, I guess, retired. And I'm just hoping that it wasn't because of the performance against Puka Nacua, because like you said, he's going to put up those numbers against a lot of people this year. And it reminds me of a story of, you know, when I was with the Oilers, I played with this guy named Ernest Givens. I don't know if you remember that name.
Sure.
Kid out of Louisville. Well, baseball was his first love. And I mean, he was just all world baseball in high school. But this one pitcher struck him out in baseball. And after that, Ernest retired from baseball because he said, if I can get struck out by a high school pitcher, there's no way I can play in the major leagues. Well, turns out that this pitcher that struck him out when he was down there in Florida in high school was a guy named Dwight Gooden.
Plot twist.
Wow.
You know, so you shouldn't. So the similarity to me is, don't give up because Puka, you know, made you look bad, because Puka's going to make a lot of people look bad. But I also know that there is a moment when you're playing that you know you're done. and it may have come to him. Usually it doesn't come during the season, because when you're in the season, you've got a routine and you're going about your business and just getting ready for the next game and all the things you have to do, taking care of your body during the week. Yeah, but God bless him if he figured out after 4 games he doesn't want to do this anymore, because if you don't love playing that game, it's just a job. And it's a job that will get on your last nerves. The business side of it gets on your nerves. Having to come in and meeting after meeting after meeting. Dude, let me just get out on the field and play. It's a grind. And if you don't love it, then it just feels like, a task that you'd rather not do. So to get out now, I would just have to applaud him if those are his true feelings. But I'm just hoping that he didn't leave because of one bad game, because everybody's going to have a bad game.
Yeah, and I know this didn't happen in Indianapolis, but what I thought of, and obviously God rest his soul given the circumstances, but I thought of Vontae Davis, even though he actually did that during a game, and I think that kind of belongs in its own category, even though I think there were other things going on there, unfortunately for him, and some things that he was dealing with there. But yeah, I'm not used to seeing. I remember, Kerry Collins, this is going back a little bit. Kerry Collins was clearly toast when the Colts brought him out of retirement in 2011. And I believe that, and Jake, maybe you remember this. I think the Colts put him on injured reserve and they said that he had a concussion. And I was thinking to myself, I think we're letting him save face there, I think. I think they put him on IR to kind of let him walk off into the sunset a little bit there. So, but this is not, it's not common for guys. I guess Howard's path just in general, Zach, is a little uncommon, right? Because he was guy on the couch, missed a full season, came back, and then after 4 games, I'm done. I can't really think of a great NFL comp for something like that.
Yeah, I would honestly say, on top of there just being moments in these first couple games where I'm sure that he was telling himself, like, my body's just not doing what I want it to do. I'm sure it also came down to, we're at the quarter mark of the season and the coaches are evaluating things on a week-to-week basis, but this is a good benchmark to say, like, can this guy get to where we need him to be? Because we're already a fourth of the way through the year. You don't have many of these. There's only 4 of these. You can't just go on wasting them for another one. So the first 4 is a good way to evaluate your season to start the year. And I'm assuming that they were probably like, we're going to reduce your role, we're going to bench you or something like that. And again, if you're a 32-year guy coming off the couch who came here because of your former coach wanted you to play for him because they just needed someone to go out there on Sundays, you're not like Alan said, you don't want to go through all the meetings and all the, workouts all day long, nutritionist, all that, just to be a backup or to be a reserve guy that maybe doesn't get to play on Sundays, So I'm sure a lot of it was him just mulling like, do I really want to go through all the business side of this just to not play? It's like the one thing I came here to do was to play. And if they're not going to play me, then why would I still be here? And people might think that's selfish or something like that. But like, again, if you're 32 and you've made the money he's made and you've had the success he's had, you can be a little selfish. You're it's about you at the end of the day. It's a job for a lot of these guys. I know it's different because the NFL is about winning and about, it's a sport at the end of the day, but it's also a job where you're getting paid to do things. So if you're not loving it, then it's fine to take that step back. So yeah, it was a very unorthodox route for him to start for the Colts. The Colts were really in a pinch with all the injuries and other guys just not being up to snuff in preseason that they were hoping for. And he came in here and gave it his best shot. It didn't work. And I'm assuming that they were going to turn to Mekhi Blackmon regardless. Now it looks like Blackmon and maybe even Edwards are going to be in for a much bigger role these next couple weeks. And it's really on these guys with the opportunity of a lifetime now to solidify a starting job. And if they don't get it done, then the Colts probably go to the trade market because you're going to have to get somebody in here. But these 2 guys are going to have the chance that most undrafted free agents or guys who got traded for 6th-round picks don't really get in the NFL, which is you get a couple game audition here to show that you can be a starting corner for an NFL team. So these young guys really got to step up and prove their worth here.
Well, one other thing I'll say about Xavien, he's no dummy because he played 4 games, and 4 games means he's credited for a full season for retirement purposes, for pension purposes. So, 4 games doesn't seem like much, but 4 games means little extra money on that pension when he decides to take it. So good for you, Xavien.
That is very true. I didn't even think about it. It's exactly 4 games you have to be active for. I didn't even cross my mind there, Al. That's a good catch there.
Hey, I respect it. I mean, especially being at home for a year, like for those of us who during COVID like transitioned to being home most of the time. Oh yeah, like that. I think that changes all of us and what we will and will not put up with and tolerate in our lives from there on out. And for him being around his kids all the time and realizing like, because I'm sure they're probably all back in Texas or wherever he lives in the off season. So for him to be here for a month and realize like, this ain't it. I got other places to be. And the bag, which was secured, of course, Alan. Yeah, like I'm right there. I probably would have done the same thing.
Yeah, nice little golden parachute, even though Puka threw him out of the plane, right? So
that's fine.
Not so bad for Xavien Howard. Colts coming off their first loss, but the squad remains optimistic about their season outlook. We'll tell you why when we return next on the Colts Squad Show. This portion of the show brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. If your bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Now that we're 4 weeks into the NFL season, I'm starting to feel like I know these teams a little bit better. I might be buying into the Colts, giving 7 to the Raiders. That seems like a decent line. I don't want to jinx it. Or thinking maybe the Jags are a sneaky money line play at home against the Chiefs, who have struggled a little bit here through the first couple of games. Regardless, the best part about FanDuel is it lets me choose whatever I feel like. I can customize my betting experience whenever I'm feeling it. I just open up the easy-to-use app and place my wager. Bada bing, bada boom, and done. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. And right now, new customers can bet just $5. If your bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. And we're back on the Locked On Colts Squad Show. Thanks so much for joining us on this lovely Wednesday evening. I'm Derek Schultz, joined by Alan Pinkett and the Locked On Colts crew of Zach Hicks and Jake Arthur. So, guys, talking about why we're optimistic here moving forward. And it's very important to me, journalistic integrity and all of that. Like I try not to totally fanboy out on the Colts. So when I say optimist, pessimist, I'm trying to be as realistic as possible. I don't know you guys are as well. I mean, like we all want to see the Colts do well, right? Of course, the people watching the show want to see the Colts do well. I'm assuming that's why you're tuning in, or maybe you're tuning in for Alan's handsomeness, like I'd mentioned earlier in the show. But I think one of the biggest reasons for me to be optimistic is not just, this is going to sound weird to say because he looks so much better in the first 3 games, but I think, Zach, you alluded to this as well when you and Jake did your Monday show. If that game against LA is bad Daniel Jones, then sign me up, because we've been talking about how he's raised his ceiling over the first 3 weeks of this Colts season. But man, I'm thinking to myself, if he's going to raise his floor too, then that's great. I mean, because like, don't get me wrong, I don't think he played great on Sunday, but I certainly don't think that he was not the main character, and I don't believe he was a net negative at all.
No, and I will say there are going to be tougher tests even than the Rams defense going forward. We got the Houston Texans twice coming up on the schedule, and that defense is just disgusting how good they are this year. The Seattle Seahawks defense is going to be a big test for him. So there are certainly games that could be worse than what he showed on Sunday. But I will say the biggest thing that really gave me optimism and Daniel Jones, and I say this as someone who it's noted here that I was not a Daniel Jones fan in the offseason. This has been reminded to me multiple times, and I fully own it. But the one thing I think was this was a game where nothing really went right for the offense in a lot of ways. Like, yes, A.D. Mitchell made that great play that should have been the game-changing touchdown, but then Mitchell didn't even go right because he didn't score the touchdown on the play. There were a lot of things that just went wrong. Their processes were off. They were getting pre-snap penalties. They were getting into 2nd and 15. The running game wasn't there until a couple of runs in the 3rd and 4th quarter. So there wasn't this whole like perfect team around Daniel Jones in this game. And he was under pressure so much in this one. Constant duress. And we did not see him turn into New York Giants Daniel Jones. We did not see a flurry of stupid decisions. There were a couple passes that he would like to have had back. But I don't think we saw him playing erratic. I don't think we saw him playing scared. And in fact, we saw him deliver multiple big-time throws while under duress in this game. And I'm not going to sit here and puff up the performance too much because he did have 2 bad interceptions where the arm certainly failed him a little bit on both of those picks. But again, if this is like a bad version of Jones, he scored a go-ahead touchdown with like 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and then threw a pass that got them down in there to go up by 2 scores with like 5 minutes left, 6 minutes left, whatever it was in the fourth quarter. So I really thought he played a pretty good game, and he had a lot of good moments under pressure, which I think was my biggest question coming into the year was how was he going to perform under pressure? Because he was always so bad under pressure with the Giants. And even in this game where the offensive line looked a lot like that Giants offensive line with how quickly they were getting beat on some of these plays, I can think of several big-time throws to like Tyler Warren where he was getting drilled right in his face by a defensive tackle that made me say like, oh, this is a different Daniel Jones. So I'm kind of with you, Derek, where it's like, look, we learned a lot in those first 3 games about Daniel Jones and how the ceiling of this offense looks with him. But if this is kind of like a bad game for him and he doesn't turn into the last 2 years of Giants, Daniel Jones still has like an 8 yards per attempt in this game, 7.9 yards per attempt, where his average the last 2 years was like 6.1, like 6.0. Like, I will take this, and I think that was the biggest indicator that this could be a good Colts team, because if this is how it looks when it's ugly, they were on the cusp of scoring 34 points against a really good Rams defense when nothing was going right for them. And Jones, I think, was a big part of that. So, yeah, I'm with you. Like, this was not a good game by Jones by any means, like a C+ type of game. But again, if this is the bad version of him, it's not Giants Daniel Jones, so I'll take that every day of the week.
No, we've seen over these last several years since Andrew Luck, we've seen the extremes of quarterback play. With Andrew, with guys like Phillip Rivers, like there are certain players who you're confident in, and there's almost no anxiety or stress when they're under center and they're going to get the ball where it needs to be. We've seen guys where it's almost hopeless. And this to me feels I'm much more comfortable with Daniel back there because like Zach said, he does not seem rattled in the moment. Like he's not a guy where it snowballs into more and more and more mistakes. And then by the end of the game, it's like it was never possible to win with him. He bounces back from mistakes, which he's finally making them 4 games into the year. But even after that first interception, he came back and made some nice throws throughout the game. They were facing, I think, a 4th down, like on their first drive of the game, got it to Michael Pittman Jr. Like I thought he's been very poised. He has been under duress a lot because he faced a lot of blitzes early on. They faced a lot of really good defensive fronts that are able to bring pressure, and he just has never caved. He comes back and makes a nice throw after every couple bad plays or whatever. Like he comes back and gets regrounded. And so that just gives me a lot of confidence that this guy is going to be fine throughout the year. And if the Colts are not going to get to the postseason or they'll fall apart or something, it's probably not going to be because of him.
Well, I won't add on to the Daniel Jones talk. You guys, I think, you gave us enough. But I think there are a number of reasons to be optimistic. If you look at the stats, there's a number of stats, there's a number of metrics that say this is a good football team. But I like to go by my own eyes. They look like a team that's under control. On offense, you don't want to be so hyper that you are out of control. You want to have a controlled aggression, a systematic way of doing your business so that you eventually go down and score. And that's what I see on offense. And on defense, it's a bend but don't break, but very opportunistic defense that can create some turnovers. And I'll tell you, going against a team like the Rams, it was a chance, because the Rams have championship DNA. And so you want to know where you stand as a player when you play a team like that. And I remember, I know I've already told one war story, but another war story, I remember when we played the Washington team, and we were both undefeated at the time. I think we had only played, maybe 3 or 4 games, and we had them beat. And Ian Howfield kicks a field goal wide right from like 30 yards. He got cut the following day, by the way.
Reserve retired is what he got the next day.
Reserve retired, that's right.
Yes. But the Washington team went on to win the Super Bowl that year.
Yep.
And walking off that field, we felt like, you know what? We'll see these guys again. Yeah, because we went head to head, and they had already some Super Bowls in their recent history, and the Oilers didn't. So it was a measuring stick type of game, but we played at a level where, we hadn't peaked out, but we felt like coming from that game, we're a pretty good team. We're going to win a lot of games. And I think that's the feeling that the Colts have, because have they peaked? Have they played as best as they can possibly play? No. They are just, from a controlled, aggressive, systematic way, just beating these teams down on offense. And it's one of those types of offenses, doesn't matter what the weather is, it's just they've got a system that works. And, even though they had adversity, there was never any panic with this team. So I'd love to point out the statistics for them, why you should be optimistic. But this is a confident football team that feels like they can win every game if they execute properly.
Yeah, and we can throw out all these predictive stats, right, that show the Colts are a top 10 team to start this year. DVOA, PFF grades, average net yards on offense and defense, success rate, yada, 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 right, for offense and defense to start the year. They'll show that the Colts are top 10, maybe top 5, honestly, in some of those. But I think for me, one of the biggest indicators when it comes to how good a team is, and this is one of the simplest things you can do with pretty much any team throughout the year to show if a team is legit or not, is do they, when they play against average to above average to even great teams, do they keep it within one score? If that's going to be the most important thing, if they keep it within one score games are essentially coin flips in the NFL. Things can go either way if you keep it within one score. So as long as you're battling and keeping it within that one score, I think that you're showing that you have enough stuff to stick in this league. And then are you just taking care of business against the teams below you? And that's what the Colts have done this year. They have a plus 40 point differential so far this season because the two teams they played who have been more bottom feeders, they didn't just keep those teams around and win by one score, win by a couple points. They decimated both those teams. One of those was a road game too, a road divisional game, and they won by 20 plus points. So, it's still early. It's still the first month of the season, but through 4 games, this Colts team has been competitive with 2 good playoff caliber teams. One of them arguably a Super Bowl caliber team, the NFC. And then the 2 bottom feeders they did play, they took care of business and just were winning those games handily by the third quarter. So I think that is a great indicator for, again, this Colts team is probably better than what some people, I know they are getting more national love right now, but I think they're better than the typical 8 to 9 win Colts teams we've seen in years past.
No, I think something that's refreshing is, mentioned nationally, they've actually gone up in some power rankings like ESPN, which is kind of what a lot of people recognize as like the main NFL power rankings. They went up in it. I think even though they lost this game against the Rams, I think most people understand the Colts very well, probably should have won that game even late into it. Like this thing really flipped like in the final minute or so. And the Colts stood toe to toe. And there was nothing they put on the field that made them look like a victim. You know what I mean? Like everything was pretty solid. And if there was an issue, they bounced back from it. Like turnovers, they came back. It didn't unravel. Like even after the A.D. Mitchell thing right in front of the goal line, the defense made the Rams punt like 3 straight times after that and then forced a fumble on the next drive. So like the defense really kept the pedal to the metal. And so they had a strong showing, but it's been the offense that everyone knows is like the strong suit of the team. So I just think they've shown so many things. Quarterback play, the offensive line like has had a couple rough patches, but overall they look pretty solid. Jonathan Taylor's still leading the league in rushing. Tyler Warren looks as advertised. Laiatu Latu's coming on. So I think they've put a lot out there that everyone can see are redeeming qualities about them and things worth kind of hanging your hat on and noting throughout the season that they should be pretty good.
Yeah, and I'll just throw one more thing in for optimism, because you mentioned his name, Latu. There's only one person who has more pressures than him, Micah Parsons.
Okay.
Latu has 9 pressures. And so Micah Parsons, too bad Latu doesn't have Micah Parsons money. But yeah, that's another reason to be optimistic. He's going to get home sooner or later.
Yeah, and Alan, your point about looking the part is well taken. I think whatever box you want to check for the Colts, whether you're thinking, okay, screw the analytics stuff, I'm just going to look with my eyes, I think you could check that box. And then if you're an analytic nerd, you could check that box too. I mean, I was kind of early on the analytic nerd revolution, and a wise man told me that I was like, what is the number one indicator to you? And this was one of the old Football Outsiders guys, and he told me, blow out bad teams, keep it close with everybody else.
Yep.
And more often, there is no end all be all, right? Because you never really know when judging these teams and circumstances, and football can be a crazy game. But I think more often than not, that is the calling card of a good team. If you savagely dunk on bad teams and keep it close and beat some of the good ones like the Colts have done through 4 weeks, they're checking that box. But that's the beauty of this evaluation after 4 weeks. I understand it's only 4 weeks, but regardless of where you look, the Colts look positively. And I think that's a really good place to be after the first 4 games. We come back on the show. Is benching A.D. Mitchell an overreaction? We're going to discuss when we play over and under reactions next on the Colts Squad Show. This portion of the Colts Squad Show brought to you by our friends at Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else as of August of 2025. From footwork to breath work, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings the same intention to how we craft every model. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. And we're back on the Locked On Colts Squad Show. I'm Derek Schultz alongside former NFLer and Golden Domer legend Alan Pinkett, Jake Arthur, Zach Hicks here as well from Locked On Colts. Let's jump right into it, because I think there are some people in the comments that are salivating, foaming at the mouth to talk about this. I figured I would just fold this into overreaction and underreaction. I did not put bench on here, even though Shane Steichen and Jake, you can allude to this maybe or talk a little bit more in depth about this. I think he was asked about, hey, what's the plan for A.D. Mitchell? And he was sort of non-committal, which maybe tells you all that you need to know there. But my overreaction of the week this week was that A.D. Mitchell should be cut, because I just don't think cutting a second-round pick 4 games into his second season is good business. And I think he's flashed enough to bet on those traits. But clearly, Zach, I mean, he's going to have to work back up that trust factor. If there was such thing as a benefit of the doubt for A.D. Mitchell because, hey, he's talented, we want to give him a look, I think he's going to have to earn that back.
Yeah, so much in the NFL is what you do away from the ball just as much as what you do when the ball is coming your way. And I think his biggest thing holding him back up to this point in his career was what was happening away from the ball being targeted to him. But there were still inconsistencies even when the ball was coming his way, like we saw on Sunday. For every 1 step forward, 2 steps back. I keep stealing that from Jake this week on everything I go on, but it's such a great way to describe A.D. Mitchell, because there are these great positive steps and then he falls backwards. And it's just like, when are we going to get him to turn this corner here? But I agree, it would be an overreaction to cut him. Obviously, at this point, he didn't commit a crime or anything. He did a horrible thing on the football field, obviously. That's hard for a lot of people to forgive. But I agree with Michigan Wolverines here in our comment section. We're talking about the holding call was probably more indication of why he's getting so few snaps when Alec Pierce is healthy. Because Alec Pierce does so many of those little things right, like blocking, like running off routes, like just doing everything you want your Z receiver or I guess he's technically the X receiver, your X receiver that just runs vertical on every other play to do. He does all those things at a very high level, where Mitchell is kind of a specialist. So when it comes to benching him, I don't think you really bench him or anything. I think you just give him back his role that he was in before Alec Pierce got hurt, which is the 5 to 7 snaps in isolation, come out here, beat man coverage for a couple snaps and get some catches. And don't block for us. Don't run off. Don't run off the corner on every other. Don't do all these little things that we have Pierce for. I don't think you like make him inactive unless you think Ashton Dulin could beat man coverage at the same level, which I love Ashton Dulin, but he can't. There's a reason why Dulin.
Yeah,
right. There's a reason why Dulin is what he is, and there's a reason why AD Mitchell is who he is. So. I think he's just going to go back to what he was prior to this week. I think the only thing he really had to that could have changed this past week was he could have gained more playing time if he didn't drop the ball at the 1 yard line, he would have gained more playing time. Because he would have finished the game 4 catches for 95 yards and a touchdown. And his big way to show that he could replace Alec Pierce, but instead it's 4 catches, 94 yards and a fumble and a hold, so I think he just goes back to his role he had before. I don't know if there's really too much to react to with it because it's not like a benching. But I do think an overreaction would have been like cutting him after that, even though, again, there's been a lot of mistakes, but it's not been like, he's not a cancer in the locker room by any means. That you only cut a 2nd round pick that early if it's clear that he just can't play whatsoever or he's a cancer in the locker room where he just – I don't want to say he's immature because it paints like a harder picture here, but there are just areas that he needs to grow as a player. And you don't cut guys like that when they're on their rookie contract. It's the cheapest time you're ever going to have these guys. This is the time to really figure it out for him. So, it's you just got to stick with it. And I don't think you make him inactive. I think you just put him back in the role that he was already at.
No, I think cutting him would be crazy. I probably wouldn't make him inactive either. The easiest thing is to just keep him in the role that he normally is in when Pierce is available. But at the same time, maybe you don't have as many things drawn up for him as you normally would. Because Shane has been talking about he's going to have to earn the trust back and everything. He's going to kind of have to earn that role back and everything. And they've alluded to, you just got to show that you're working hard and this and that in the background. And I asked Shane today, I was like, you guys have actually been talking a lot lately about how he does work hard. Like he's like an early guy in the building. Like you guys have been lauding his work ethic. I was like, I was like, how he already works hard, you say, but he's got to earn his role back by working hard. Like it's what he's already doing. Like, what does he have to do? And to me, it just, they probably want him like laser focused because I don't think he's earned the right yet to kind of be this goofball or this show off is maybe the thing. Like they probably want to see like laser focus, like about that business constantly, like not even leaving room for potential error. You know what I mean? Like, because he is he's in a room with absolute football guys led by Reggie Wayne. Alec Pierce, Michael Pittman Jr., and Josh Downs are all about the work. You're not going to see them taking a play off. You're not going to see them taking practice for granted. They are all guys that are going to make sure the play is made before they're doing anything boisterous or anything like that. And what AD did it essentially cost the Colts the game. I'm not going to act like it didn't, but at the same time, what he did was just stupid. It wasn't malicious or anything like that. I saw a kid who was running to the goal line with vindication in his eyes of like how hard of a rookie season he had and how much crap he's taken, rightfully so at times. And he was on his way to like finally making his first touchdown of his career, the biggest play of his career. Finally, like, look, guys, I am worth this time. And like, I am worth the effort and time, your patience, you're taking. And then just in the midst of the celebration, literally like fumbled the bag. You know what I mean? So the kid just needs more focus and attention to detail. Because like you are seeing him develop into a good player. You know what I mean? Like, let's not, like Zach mentioned, like the guy essentially had 100 yards and a touchdown in this game, if not for that play. So like he was on his way to a very good game. And we saw over the summer, like once he started getting a couple good days in camp, it was a wrap. He was a superstar over the summer. So like, if you're starting to see that on the field, you can't just bury that. Like you might slow play him for the next couple weeks, but otherwise you put him back in that same role he had. he gets his probably like 3 targets a game or so with Pierce being active, but you let him earn it back that way. You just don't make his role grow like it probably would have if he would have actually cashed in on that touchdown.
Well, I would say it would definitely be an overreaction to cut this guy. But I guess what I'll say about A.D. Mitchell is it takes time to become a pro. This is just his second year, and hopefully the Colts will have patience with him because he's a second-round pick. They probably will have patience with him. But, one of the things that happens is, the first thing you do is you buy a car when you come in the league, or you buy your mom a house. I'm glad a lot of guys quit doing that because they go into debt fast doing that mess. And then you can only get so many suits. And, it's still a fun thing in your first and second year. But at some point, and it usually happens in the third year, I remember it happening in the third year for me, you get down to the business of football. All that ancillary stuff doesn't mean anything anymore. Getting another car doesn't mean anything. It's all about ball. And what can I do to stay in this league for 7 years? What can I do to stay in this league for 10 years? And you realize it's all about making plays. And making plays is all about detail and being serious about your craft. I've heard a lot of receivers talk about, hey, you got to master your craft. And part of that is this, you become an adult in this business, because first and second year is sort of like being in puberty. All right. You just haven't gotten there yet to realize I'm a grown ass man playing with a bunch of grown men, and I need to grow up myself so that I can play on their level or surpass them. So I just see it as it's a kid doing kid stuff, but at some point, and this will help him. This is probably going to be the best thing that happened to him, is dropping that ball, because now it forces him to be more serious about his craft, not to take anything for granted, to be detail oriented, to do all the things that a receiver has to do when the ball's not coming to you. Otherwise, you don't get on the field. So I think as bad as it was, there may be a blessing in the fact that it did happen to him, because it might make him become a pro sooner.
Yeah, and one more thing I want to say about him before I get to one more point for overreaction that's aside from A.D. Mitchell. It's kind of like, some people are just not good test takers, in school. Like with A.D. Mitchell, it feels like he's getting the homework right. He's getting the practice tests right. He's getting all the remedial sessions, getting them right and stuff. But when that test comes, it's just not clicking for him. And it's one thing if someone throughout all of high school, it just can't take a test, because that's an indication that maybe he just struggles with the test environment. But right now he's like a sophomore in high school. Like, it can still click for him, so, so as of right now, he has struggled with those tests in the NFL, but it's not the end of the world. They still have multiple years of control on him. He's got time to figure this out. The key is how he responds to this moment. That is the biggest thing for him, because like Alan said, this could be a saving point for him, or it could be the beginning of the end for him. It's just all about how you mentally take it. But one more thing, because this was not supposed to be an A.D. Mitchell segment. This is supposed to be the overreaction, underreaction segment. I did want to say, I think people are overreacting a little bit to the Colts defense giving up nearly 400 yards to Matthew Stafford. I watched all that film in excruciating detail. There's a 30-minute video on my YouTube channel breaking down the Colts coverages in this game, and they did a lot of good. There were some issues, and one of those issues retired earlier today. So they fixed one of those issues there. But I think a lot of this really needs to be chalked up to, yes, 88 yards came on a mistake on defense, but a lot of this is Matthew Stafford is just such a good quarterback. And like Matthew Stafford and Puka Nacua, there were times where the Colts were bracketing Nacua with double coverage on him. And those guys were just on top of where they needed to be on their timing. There were times where they were bumping him and making sure, like, okay, he can't run a slant here. They're still going to throw the slant to him somehow and get him the ball. And Stafford was looking off safeties and throwing the ball no look to the back of the end zone, throwing the ball no look to the second level while staring down Puka, throwing it to a tight end that behind after cross jumped Puka's route. So I would not say let's look too much into a first month of the season showing against Matthew Stafford, because by my account, honestly, with how a lot of these quarterbacks have played this year, outside of Josh Allen this year, is there a quarterback playing better than Matthew Stafford to start the season? And it's not like Stafford's played bad defenses either. He played Houston's defense earlier in the year. The Colts defense, I think, is pretty solid as well. And he's still just shredding these defenses with Puka Nacua being his top dog, with Devontae Adams being a good player on the outside. So, yeah, I don't want to overreact too much to a Stafford showing like this, because when I was watching that film, it's like the highest level of quarterback play that you're going to see on a lot of these throws. It's very, very tough to slow him down. So they held him to low 20s for most of that game too. It just came down to a guy falling down late. So I think it was a good showing despite what the numbers say. And I think we're overreacting that this Colts pass defense is terrible. They're going to be the bottom 5 team in pass defense. No, I think they're going to be fine. They're not going to play Stafford every week. This is the best quarterback that they're going to play all year, I think. And that's even with Herbert and Mahomes coming up this season with how good Stafford's currently playing.
Yeah. Do we have time for an underreaction?
Absolutely.
Real quick, Alan. Real quick.
Yes. Okay, I'll make it quick. But I mean, you guys had alluded to it, but I kind of see it differently, because there's a lot of positive statistics that we can give to Daniel Jones, but and to Jonathan Taylor. But I think the underreaction is us not appreciating how well this offensive line has played. You've got the leading rusher. You've got Daniel Jones is 3rd in the NFL in passing. And then he's attempted 121 passes, Daniel Jones, only been sacked 4 times. You know, in terms of pressures, he's got a pressure to sack rate of 8%, you know, which that's one of those analytic nerd things. Yeah, but the offensive line, to me, has done a spectacular job. They have, for the most part, protected Daniel Jones, and he's had, I know, 50 dropbacks under pressure, you know, but he's completed most of his passes. And that's, to me, a testament of how good this offensive line has been doing. Now, you got outstanding athletes on defense. They're going to win some battles there. They're going to get some sacks. And by the way, the Rams were the #1 sack team going into that game. And would they end up giving up, 2 sacks?
2.
So I think the offensive line needs, you know, some love. I think they've been underappreciated, and we've underreacted to how good they really are and what they mean to this team.
Yeah, to piggyback on that, Alan, you've done it not only against the Rams, but against the Denver front in half your games. I mean, that's half your games right there. So it'd be one thing if they were doing all this and it's just the Titans and the Dolphins and blah, 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 right? But these are some of the best NFL fronts that you're going to face all year. Yeah. And yes, they've had their rough patches, like you said, Jake. But yeah, you're right, Zach. Even the Dolphins front is really not bad, right? Yeah. That's not a weakness on their team. So I do think that the offensive line has played even better, and I had pretty bullish expectations for them. I thought there was going to be a rock solid unit, and I think they've been even a little bit better than that. But we come back on the show for a final time. We'll take our first look at the Raiders and talk about Vegas and the Colts' ability to bounce back in Week 5. That's next when the Colts Squad Show returns. This portion of the Colts Squad Show brought to you by Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all of your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. Even for somebody like me, I'm kind of a nerd, and you know, I thought that I was paying attention to where all of my dad's a retired CPA, right? So I think, I'm really good about this. I'm really good about my money. Monarch's been super helpful for me to find any leaks in the boat. For example, I linked all of my accounts to Monarch and discovered there were a handful of subscriptions that I was paying for that I wasn't even using. So out. Thanks to Monarch Money. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNFL. Back for a final time here on the Colts Squad Show alongside Alan Pinkett, Jake Arthur, Zach Hicks. I'm Derek Schultz. Thanks so much for joining us. And every Wednesday night, I think the word's starting to get out now. Every Wednesday night, 9 o'clock, Locked On Colts Squad Show. Obviously, Jake and Zach will have your everyday show for your everydayers on Locked On Colts. And then we will do get the squad back together for live post-game reactions after every single Colts game this year. Even that weird one in Germany, we're going to be doing a live reaction show at like 12:30 in the afternoon.
Yeah, we'll still be eating breakfast.
Yeah, I know. That'll be interesting. We'll see how that one ends up going. But we are your home for live post-game Colts game recaps all season long, so keep it locked right here on Locked On Colts. Guys, let's talk Raiders. 1-3, they've not looked particularly great, despite playing, for the most part, some weaker competition to this point. Zach, to me, it's one of those teams that, like, they're not bottom barrel seemingly in anything, but they're kind of like top of the back of the pack in a lot of offensive and defensive categories. I'm not really sure that they're overly bad anywhere, but they just don't appear to be necessarily great anywhere either.
Yeah, it's one of those teams where you're happy you're facing them earlier in the season. They've had a lot of moving parts coming into the season. New quarterback, new coach, new offensive coordinator, couple changes up there on offense. The offensive line's been a little banged up to start the year. So it's definitely the type of team that you want to play early in the season because Geno Smith and Pete Carroll and even Chip Kelly, I think, an offense coordinator, are too good to where they're going to be like terrible by the end of the season. So you want to get them while they're in this rut. You're getting them at home now, so you get them in your home's environment, that environment that you've averaged 32 points per game to start the season at. I think this is a great a great matchup for the Colts to get back on track. And I haven't really had great expectations for a Colts team ever, like really in my time covering this team, maybe the 2018 team when they went on that crazy run. But even then, that roster was so bad that I didn't expect them to go on that crazy run in any way. But this is kind of one of those games where I'm going to treat it not like the Titans game a couple weeks ago, but in a similar fashion where it's like, look, if you want to be a playoff team, this is the game that you got to take care of. And we talked about it a couple segments ago where the teams that are legit in this league, the teams that are around their level or teams better, you keep that within one score, and the teams below you, you show that they are below you. And I think this Raiders team is reeling right now. They're not in the greatest place. They have an injury at their left tackle. Their best offensive lineman is missing this game, coming off a week where Leatu Latu had a 35% pass rush win rate against the Los Angeles Rams. This is a game where you got to take advantage, especially at a home environment. So, I'm not saying that I need the Colts to win by 30 or anything like that in this game, but I really want to see the Colts get back to what they looked like in those first 3 weeks. Defense get back to taking the ball away, get some sacks out there, make Geno uncomfortable with a backup left tackle behind him. And then on the other side of the ball, I want to see the offense's process get back to what it was in those first 3 weeks, especially now that you have Gonsalves and Alec Pierce back. And again, you're back home to where a team's not going to jump your silent count like they were in Los Angeles when you're at home because you don't have to worry about that as much. Your pre-snap process can be a lot cleaner at home because it's your environment. They're not going to be screaming, at 100,000 decibels or whatever when you're about to snap the ball. It's a controlled environment for your offense in your dome. So, I think this needs to be a week where the Colts get back on track, get back to their winning ways. Offense put up around 30-something points like they were doing, and just take care of business against a team that's kind of reeling right now.
Yeah, there's not a lot that worries me about the Raiders. Famous last words, of course.
Yeah.
But I mean, the Colts know obviously you gotta do what you can to stop Ashton Genty, which largely has been done this season. Now they finally figured out what to do with him last week. He had like 150 yards of offense and 3 touchdowns. So that is the Bears defense, mind you. So we'll see how it goes. But I mean, if you just reasonably contain him, and then you understand that Geno is going to try and go to Brock Bowers like over the middle and stuff, you'll be fine because Trey Tucker and Jacoby Myers on the outside, they're not going to keep you up at night. So in terms of the Colts defense versus the Raiders offense, it's not that big a deal. That offensive line is buns anyways, and they just lost Colton Miller to IR for a bit. So like they're going to have issues to deal with. you got DeForest Buckner. Latu is really, really turning it on. Contrary to some belief, like Latu is having a good time of it lately. And then on the offensive side of the ball, Max Crosby is a game wrecker, no lie. But like outside of him, there's a lot of no-name guys on here that aren't like, they're not like exceeding.
Famous last words, Jake. You are really putting it up there for famous last words.
We're going to save all this.
I don't normally. I'm not usually the smack talker, Zach. But this is a game where you just lost a game that you should have won. Now you have another AFC game at home. If you're still trying to build that playoff resume, this is one where you come out and you win with style points. You know what I mean? You come out and win this one healthily. Jonathan Taylor, Zach and I talked the other day, like Jonathan Taylor could have a good game, of course, but like this is one where I think Daniel Jones goes north of 300 in this one. You just look at that secondary and it's like, what worries you about Las Vegas' secondary? Not much. In the back seven, they have Devin White, they have Jermaine Pratt. Like Tyler Warren, what's up, buddy? Like this is your time to shine.
Well, the Raiders in a loss amassed 240 yards on the ground. So
pretty good.
Although we were thinking, we have talked about, we sure would like to see better rush defense for the Colts, but the Colts turns out they're 8th in the NFL in rush defense, allowing less than 100 yards a game. But I think now is there's two reasons why it's a good time to catch the Raiders right now. Number one, it's going to be for them and their body clocks 10 a.m. when they kick off. Now, I don't know. 10 a.m. means probably like what, a 5 a.m. wake up call. Just now they're going to be dealing with a time change, but their body clock is going to say, daggone it, it's 10 o'clock. I'm still stiff. I'm not ready to move yet. That's one reason. The second reason I say it's a great time to catch him, because Pete Carroll in his first year, he's still trying to build his culture. He's a proven winner, a great coach in my mind, great coach wherever he's been. He's won, but it just takes a while to build that culture. So he's not been able to put his stamp on the program yet, because he's got to get the players used to how he manages the team. They've got to get used to how he wants things being done, because right now, would you say new quarterback, new running back, there's a lot of new things. And by the way, their tight end Brock Bowers is nursing a knee, so we'll just have to see how that's going to be, although I don't think there's going to be any problem. But now is a good time to catch this team, because they really haven't figured out what their personality is. And the Colts know exactly what they want to do to a team like this. And so in terms of a psychological edge, the Colts have it. And you never assume the team is going to be bad, because that's why they made the movie Any Given Sunday. An NFL team can rise up at any time. But if the Colts handle their business and do what they're supposed to do, they'll blow this team out.
Yeah, and look, I want to blow out, because again, it goes to what we said earlier in the episode about what good teams do. But ultimately, just get the win. You're at home, defend your home turf. I think this is a time where, again, a lot of the Colts process is reliant on what the home field advantage gives you with their pre-snap motion, with their play action, with a lot of their silent counts and stuff. It really helps to have that home crowd. So this team, if they want to be a playoff team, they got to be a team that wins 6, 7. I mean, well, technically they don't have 8 home games this year or something, right? Because don't they have the one? Don't they have? I think it's 8, but they would have had 9. But the one overseas is
that's their home game.
Yeah, so they lose one home game, but you want to have a very strong home record any year, but especially this year with how your offense is run and how much your offense wants to stay on schedule. But I think the biggest matchup is kind of what Jake alluded to with the Colts middle of the field against these Raiders linebackers. A lot of run stuffers on this team. Landon Roberts was one that Jake didn't mention. I always have to mention Landon
That's
Roberts.
Your guy, man.
One of my all-time favorite players, just because he's a 1970s linebacker, just big shoulder pads, thumper against the run, but I don't know. He can't cover like me. No, I'm just kidding. He can't cover Allen out in the open field right now. He's just, he's a great thumper, but he's not a great cover linebacker. And that's kind of what their linebacker group is. So with the Colts, how they throw the ball early to open up the run late, this Raiders team, they like to stack up against the run, get these thumpers out there, match your 12 personnel with base, do a lot of play action, throw the ball over behind those guys, get Tyler Warren, get Michael Pittman Jr. involved, and throw for, your 150, 200 yards in the first half, and then all Jonathan Taylor in the second half. I think there's a good process to beat this team and beat this team handily. It's just about how well they execute and how much they avoid those penalties this week that they really ran into last week.
Zach, I know you and Jake have been doing this podcast and a podcast for a long time. I'm going to go back in the archives to the 2021 season late in that year and see if he called the Raiders buns before the collapse game at home against the Raiders.
I
Carson
think we
Wentz
were doing,
was buns.
I think we were doing a different Colts podcast back then, but we were still doing a Colts podcast, I believe, in that 2021 season. It wasn't.
I'm going to go dig up that audio.
But there were some 2022 takes that didn't age well early in that season that were pretty rough. There was the shutout in Jacksonville that looked terrible. So yeah, we do have some takes that have aged horribly over the years for sure.
We've all been there, and I'm sure we'll have some on the Squad Show too. But still, tune in every single week right here on the Locked On Colts Squad Show. 9 p.m. on Wednesday. That's your midweek show, and we are your home once again. I'm going to keep beating that drum. Every single Colts game, live post-game recaps right here on Locked On Colts. We'll be back with you Sunday to recap the game against Vegas shortly after Colts Raiders goes final right here on the Locked On Network. Until then, keep it locked on Zach and Jake every day on Locked On Colts. Check out their other awesome team and squad shows and content on the entire Locked On umbrella for more NFL insight on the Locked On platform too. And we will see you next time right here on the Locked On Colts Squad Show.